Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. You might want to sit down for this one. Because what happened in my house that evening didn't start with yelling or screaming or a slamming door. It started with humming. Soft, carefree, off-key. That's how she came in. Fallon. A melody on her lips, the scent of something expensive trailing behind her, and an emerald dress that shimmered like she'd stolen it straight out of a magazine ad. She didn't even glance at me, just tossed her purse, slipped off her heels, and twirled once in front of the hallway mirror. Guess who got this on clearance? She said like it was some game show moment. But the mirror didn't respond the way I did. It had a message for her. A short one, written in red, right across the glass. She hadn't noticed it yet. She was too busy admiring herself, adjusting a curl, tilting her head. That mirror had seen everything. And now, it was finally speaking. I didn't say a word. I just sat there on the couch, holding the remote, not even watching the TV. My eyes weren't on her either. They were on the hallway, on that mirror, on the 7 words I'd written just 20 minutes earlier with her own lipstick. She finally saw it. Her expression didn't change at first. Not fully, just a tiny twitch in her left cheek. A micro-freeze of her jaw. She blinked, once, then again, and read it a second time. I know what you wore it for. The dress suddenly looked heavier on her body. She turned slowly. Our eyes met. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask. Because this wasn't a question. This was the unraveling. And it had only just begun. She didn't speak. She just stood there in front of the mirror like it had slapped her across the face. Her reflection staring back with lipstick-red truth smeared across glass. I know what you wore it for. 7 words that had more weight than every "I love you" she'd ever said. And still, I didn't move. I let the silence wrap around her like fog. Thick. Uncomfortable. Honest. Finally, she spoke, but not to me. She turned toward the mirror and let out the weakest laugh I've ever heard. This some kind of joke? She asked the room. But her eyes were locked on mine through the reflection. She didn't blink. That. I tilted my head, like I was trying to figure out what kind of performance she was auditioning for. You tell me, I said, my voice low, steady. You're the one in costume. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. See, Fallon had been rehearsing her life for a while. Playing roles. Perfect wife. Dedicated planner. Just busy with work, babe. But the cracks had grown too wide to hide. And that dress? That wasn't just fabric. That was a flag. One she hadn't meant to wave inside our home. I had spent the last 3 weeks pretending. Pretending not to notice the perfume that lingered hours after her coffee with Dana. Pretending not to see her phone face down, silenced, even during dinner. Pretending not to hear her whispering in the laundry room with the door closed. And worst of all, pretending I wasn't slowly unraveling from the inside out. You want to know what broke me? It wasn't even a message or a photo. It was a receipt. I found it buried in the glove box of her car when I borrowed it to take Rufus to the vet. Dinner for 2. Expensive wine. Dessert. 1 single rose added to the table. On a Wednesday night, when she told me she was helping set up a corporate retreat at a winery. I called the restaurant the next morning. Said I'd left my jacket there. The hostess was too polite to realize what she gave away. Oh yes, I remember. Corner booth. Couple celebrating an anniversary. She was in that green dress, right? Gorgeous. That green dress. The same one, now clinging to Fallon's body, as if it suddenly realized it didn't belong here. She stepped toward me now. Slowly. Like I was a wild animal she wasn't sure would bite. Thad, whatever you think you know. I held up a flash drive. No words. Just held it up like a priest holding a cross to a vampire. Her face fell. She recognized it. She knew exactly what was on it. Her hands started to tremble. What is that? Your voice, I said softly. Your laughter. Him. You. Our bedroom. Our sheets. And you didn't even close the blinds. She covered her mouth. I stood up. Not fast, not aggressive. Just tired. I walked past her and toward the mirror, then took the lipstick tube from my pocket and underlined the final word in my message. 4. I thought you bought this dress for me once, I said. But now I know. You wore it for him. And I needed you to look at yourself while you're still in it. I walked away after that. Not far, just out onto the porch. I sat down on the steps with Rufus curled beside me, as if he knew I needed something warm that wouldn't lie to me. Inside, I could hear her pacing, crying, saying my name like it still belonged to her. But this wasn't the end. It was just the start of her unraveling. The sound of muffled crying behind the front door wasn't as satisfying as I thought it would be. I used to imagine that if she ever got caught, really caught, she'd break down in some cinematic moment of regret. She'd collapse to her knees, admit everything, tell me I was always enough, and beg me to stay. But life doesn't hand you that kind of closure, especially not when the betrayal is layered, rehearsed, and carried out with a smile on the way out the door. I sat on that porch with Rufus pressed against my leg, watching the sky bleed into twilight. I could still hear Fallon's heels clacking against the hardwood inside, pacing, pausing, whispering things to herself, probably rehearsing her next lie or trying to come up with some excuse that might paint me as the villain. Wouldn't be the first time. She'd gotten real good at flipping the script. I'd bring up how distant she'd become, and she'd accuse me of being clingy. I'd ask why she locked her phone, and she'd call me paranoid. I told her once that I missed her. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're too sensitive, Thad. I need a little space." Space, apparently, meant hotel rooms. Expensive wine. Lingerie I never got to see. Eventually, the door creaked open behind me. She didn't step outside, just stood in the doorway like a ghost afraid of the light. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that," she said quietly. I didn't turn around. "You mean the mirror?" Her voice was thin. That was cruel. I finally looked back at her. She'd taken off the dress, now wearing one of my old hoodies. The irony made my chest tighten. "You think that was cruel?" She flinched. "I didn't post it online. I didn't call your mother. I didn't forward the recordings to your clients. I gave you privacy," I said. "More than you gave me." Her eyes welled up. "Thad, I didn't mean for it to go this far." That was her line. That was always her line. "I didn't mean for you to find out. I didn't mean for it to be serious. I didn't mean for it to hurt you." But it did. All of it. In ways she'd never understand. "I never even slept with him," she blurted, and that broke me. I stood. Not quickly, not violently. I just stood and turned fully toward her. "You think this is about sex?" Her lip quivered. "You gave him pieces of you," I said. "The ones you used to save for me. The jokes. The looks. The little things. You let him inside our world, Fallon. The world I built with you. And you didn't just let him in. You decorated the place for him." I took a breath, my chest trembling from finally saying the words out loud. "It's not the bedroom. It's the betrayal." She stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Then what do you want me to say?" "I don't want a script," I said. "I want the truth, not the performance." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have it in her. And for the first time, I saw her clearly, not as the woman I married, but as the person she had chosen to become. Someone who rehearsed emotions instead of feeling them. Someone who didn't understand the difference between regret and remorse. I walked past her, back into the house. She didn't follow. I went into the bedroom and opened the drawer where the folder's Still Saturday Truth, written across the front in Sharpie. I didn't need it anymore, but I left it out on the bed for her to see. Then I walked into the guest room, closed the door, and finally allowed myself to cry where she couldn't see it. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid on the guest bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling fan as it creaked in slow circles. You'd think that after everything, the lies, the betrayal, the recordings, I'd feel relief. Like I'd finally uncovered the truth and could move on. But that's the thing no one tells you. The truth doesn't free you. It traps you in a different kind of prison. One where the walls are made of memories, and the air is thick with questions you'll never get answered. I could hear her moving around all night. Cupboards opening. The fridge door. The occasional creak of the floorboards just outside the guest room. She didn't knock. I think she knew better. Or maybe she thought I'd come to her. I didn't. I couldn't. Not this time. Around 4 a.m., I finally sat up. I didn't feel tired. Just empty. I walked to the kitchen in the dark, not bothering to turn the lights on. Rufus trotted behind me, his nails tapping softly against the floor. When I flipped the switch, I saw her sitting at the dining table. Her hair was a mess. Eyes swollen. Hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands like a teenager who'd been caught sneaking out. She looked up at me, opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. That became our language, unfinished thoughts and quiet looks. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "So," I finally said, "what happens now?" She wiped her face, sniffled, and then forced a bitter smile. "I don't know. Do you want me to leave?" The fact that she asked that, like I was the one who had to make a decision about her mess, made something shift in my chest. Shouldn't you have thought about that before you brought someone else into our marriage? Her shoulders dropped. I didn't plan any of it, Thad. Of course you didn't. Affairs never start with a blueprint. They start with a message that felt harmless, a drink that felt casual, a laugh that wasn't meant to mean anything, until it did. She stared down at the table, twisting the edge of a napkin in her hands. I was lonely. That hit me harder than I expected. Not because I didn't already feel it, but because it was the first honest thing she'd said in weeks. You were lonely. I repeated, more to myself than to her. And you never thought to tell me that? She looked up, and her eyes glistened under the dim kitchen light. I didn't know how. That made me laugh, not a funny laugh. The kind that escapes your throat when your heart is too exhausted to scream. You didn't know how? Fallon, we used to talk about everything. You used to tell me when a commercial made you cry. Now you're telling me you couldn't say you were unhappy? She stood suddenly, the chair screeching against the tile. I didn't say I was unhappy with you, she snapped. I was unhappy with me. That silenced me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Not like husband and wife. Not like strangers. Something in between, like war veterans sharing a battlefield with no more bullets left. She took a step toward me. Then another. I didn't move. When she reached me, she placed a hand on my arm. It was cold. I know I broke something, she whispered. But if you want to try and fix it, I'll do anything. The thing is, that used to be all I wanted. I used to dream of her saying those words. But now that they were here, they didn't feel like healing. They felt like a Band-Aid being offered after amputation. I don't know if I want to fix this, I said honestly. I don't even know if there's this left to fix. She started crying again, quiet, heavy tears that fell onto the fabric of my shirt when she leaned into me. I didn't hug her back. Not yet. Because part of me still needed to grieve the version of her I thought I knew. And part of me didn't trust that she was crying for me, not for herself. I didn't push her away. But I also didn't say I forgave her. That's where we were now. Stuck in a limbo built from silence, betrayal, and the softest kind of heartbreak. The kind that doesn't yell or slam doors, but instead just stops reaching. And in that stillness, something else started growing. Not closure. Not forgiveness. A question. One that would demand an answer very soon. The next morning felt like waking up in someone else's house. Nothing had physically changed, but everything felt off. The air was too quiet. The walls seemed colder. Even the fridge hum sounded unfamiliar. I stayed in the guest room longer than necessary, staring at the ceiling, Rufus curled beside me like a tiny sentinel guarding what was left of my peace. When I finally walked out, Fallon was already in the kitchen. She was making coffee. Mine, actually. The way I liked it. She used to forget how. Or claim she did. But today she remembered. The smell hit me before I even turned the corner. French roast. Splash of oat milk. No sugar. I don't know why, but that hit harder than it should have. She didn't say good morning. She just slid the mug across the table toward my seat and sat down across from me like we were negotiating a truce. Her face was puffy. No makeup. Hair tied in a messy bun that I used to adore. She looked tired. Not late-night tired. Emotionally bankrupt tired. I sat. Took a sip. Didn't thank her. I didn't sleep, she said. I stayed quiet. I kept thinking about what you said. About how I gave him pieces of me. I glanced up, cautious. You were right, she added, voice barely above a whisper. I did. Not just my time. Not just the stupid flirtations. I gave him access. To things that were supposed to be ours. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even realize it was happening at first, she continued. It was slow. A little inside joke. A text here and there. Him complimenting me when I felt invisible at home. That made me flinch. She noticed. I don't mean that you made me feel invisible, she said quickly. I mean, I let myself feel that way. I shut you out and let someone else in. You invited someone else in, I said finally. There's a difference. She nodded, swallowing hard. I wish I could undo it, she said. I'd give anything to go back. But she couldn't. That was the thing. No matter how many tears, apologies, or perfect cups of coffee, she couldn't turn the clock. Couldn't unwrite the texts. Couldn't unshare those hotel sheets. And the more she talked, the more I realized something awful. She still didn't fully get it. To her, the affair was the climax. The breaking point. But for me, the real betrayal started way earlier. It was in all the tiny choices she made that slowly chipped away at the life we built. The fake smiles. The brushed-off concerns. The nights she rolled over when I reached for her. That was the real damage, the parts she never thought counted. I have to ask you something, I said, my voice low. And I need you to answer it honestly. She sat up straighter. Okay. Did you love him? The air left the room. She didn't answer right away. And that silence? That tiny hesitation? It crushed me. I didn't plan to, she whispered. But yes. For a moment. I think I did. I closed my eyes. Not because I couldn't look at her, but because I needed a second to stay human. To not throw the mug. To not scream into the walls. To not fall to the floor and break like glass. She reached for my hand, and for a moment, I let her take it. I needed to feel if there was still something real there. Anything. But all I felt was the memory of what used to be. I pulled away. I'm not angry that you loved someone else, I said. I'm angry that you stopped loving me and didn't have the courage to tell me. She broke down then. Fully. Not the silent tears. Not the performative guilt. This time it was ugly. Shaking. Sobbing. Face in her hands like the weight finally caught up to her. But here's the twist. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't bring closure. It made me feel like the ghost of a man still haunting a life that had already moved on without him. I stood, grabbed Rufus's leash, and said, I'm going for a walk. She didn't follow. I don't know how far I walked, but I passed streets I'd never paid attention to before. Everything felt new and strange and wrong. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because the tears had dried up somewhere between the mirror message and the answer I hoped I'd never hear. When I got back, the house was quiet again. A different kind of quiet. On the kitchen table, beside my now empty mug, was a folded piece of paper. Just my name. In her handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for 10 full minutes, heart pounding. Already knowing this was the moment the entire story would shift. I didn't touch the letter at first. I stood in the middle of the kitchen like some out-of-place extra in a play I didn't audition for, staring at that folded piece of paper like it was radioactive. Just my name. Thad, written in her handwriting. The same handwriting that used to leave notes on my desk saying, "Don't forget to smile today," now suddenly felt like the end of a book I didn't want to finish. Rufus whined softly at my feet, probably sensing that something in me had changed. Again, when I finally picked it up, my hands were cold and slightly shaking. I unfolded it slowly. No envelope. No dramatic packaging. Just regular lined paper, the kind we kept by the phone for grocery lists and takeout orders. The first line punched me right in the chest. If you're reading this, I've already left the house. I had to sit down. It continued. I couldn't face you again. Not after this morning. I don't know what's left between us, if anything, but I need to explain the parts one couldn't say out loud. Maybe I owe you that, at least. Or maybe I'm just trying to make peace with the version of me I destroyed. She wrote like she was bleeding onto the page. I didn't expect it. I expected deflection. Denial. More of the same. But what came next was far more disturbing than an admission. She didn't just fall into an affair. She planned the escape. Not from me, exactly, but from her life. The pressure. The expectations. The version of herself she said she never fully recognized but kept pretending to be because everyone else seemed so sure that she was happy. And it turns out she wasn't. Not for a long time. Maybe not ever. She wrote, I started dying in this marriage when I realized you loved me too much to see I didn't love myself at all. You wanted to fix everything, and I let you, because it was easier to let someone hold me together than admit I was falling apart. I wore the smile. I played the wife. But inside, I was rotting. My stomach turned. I never saw any of that. Maybe I didn't want to. I just thought she needed time, or rest, or space. I thought if I showed her enough love, she'd bloom again. Instead, I had been watering a ghost. She went on to describe him, the man she cheated with, but not by name. Just him. Apparently, they met at a vendor event 6 months ago. He made her laugh when she was in one of her dark spirals. She said he never asked for anything. Never expected her to be perfect. She said it felt like a vacation from her own reflection. Then she wrote the line I'll never forget. I never stopped loving you, Thad. I just didn't know how to be loved by someone who still saw me as whole. That line tore something open in me I didn't know I'd sealed shut. Because for years, I thought I was the problem. That I wasn't exciting enough. Not manly enough. Too careful. Too emotional. But the truth? The truth was worse. She didn't leave because I lacked something. She left because she didn't believe she deserved what I gave her. I don't even know what's more heartbreaking. Watching someone fall out of love with you, or watching them sabotage love because they think they're unworthy of it. The letter ended with this: I'm going to stay with my sister. I know it's not forever. I don't even know if it's right. But I need to be somewhere quiet. I need to sit with the person I've become. I don't expect forgiveness. But if there's anything left in you that still sees me, I hope someday you'll understand I was broken before I broke us. No signature. Just white space. I sat at the table for hours. I read that letter again and again, and every time it changed, not the words, but how they landed. One moment I felt rage, then pity, then clarity, then nothing at all. By the time night fell, I realized something else. I wasn't relieved that she left. I was terrified, because her absence didn't give me peace. It gave me space, and space, when you're broken, is a dangerous thing. It forces you to sit in the wreckage and ask questions no one else can answer. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I sat in the kitchen, lights off, with Rufus asleep on my feet and that letter still in my hands. And I whispered to no one in particular. Why didn't you just tell me you were drowning? But the house had already returned to silence. And silence never offers closure. Just echoes. I spent the next 3 days walking through our house like I was trespassing on someone else's memories. Everything had her fingerprints. The way the couch cushions slumped, the playlist still cued on the speaker, the faint vanilla scent clinging to the throw blanket she used to wrap herself in when she binge-watched shows she never finished. But Fallon herself? She was gone. And she didn't take much, either. Just a duffel bag, her laptop, a few blouses, as if she was planning to come back. Or too afraid to fully admit she wouldn't. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers. Not my brother. Not even the one friend I had left who would have dropped everything to sit with me in that hollow living room. I wasn't ready for the questions. I wasn't ready for the sympathy, or worse, the advice. Because what could anyone tell me that I didn't already scream at myself at 2 a.m. while staring at a fridge full of food I couldn't eat? On the 4th night, I opened the truth folder one last time. I had avoided it since she left. I thought maybe the letter made it unnecessary, like I'd outgrown the need for evidence. But it pulled at me. Something in that folder still felt unfinished. There were receipts I'd forgotten about, printouts of screenshots. But what really stopped me cold was a small voice recording I'd saved to a USB. It was from a hidden app one installed on our home office desktop, set to capture audio whenever the mic detected conversation. It was supposed to be for work calls. But one afternoon, it caught something else. Fallon. And him. I listened with headphones, half expecting the worst. But it wasn't graphic. It wasn't even romantic. It was just ordinary. Too ordinary. She was laughing. He made a joke about my cooking. She agreed. He makes these little tuna casseroles that taste like a sad middle school lunch tray, she said, and they both laughed. It was the way she said it that wrecked me. Not because it was mean, but because it was intimate, casual, comfortable. The kind of comment people make when they've long stopped feeling guilty. Then came the part that truly broke me. He asked her, "So what's the plan? You gonna leave him?" There was a pause. Too long. And then, her voice. Quiet, but not hesitant. "I think he already left me. He just hasn't realized it yet." I stopped the recording. I just sat there, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. Because she wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the line, without even knowing it, I had left. Not physically, not emotionally, but something deeper. I'd started disconnecting the moment she began drifting. I just didn't say anything. I didn't fight it. I let it happen, piece by piece, as if hoping silence would repair what words might ruin. And maybe that's how most marriages die. Not with screaming, but with both people quietly walking away in opposite directions, hoping the other will turn around first. That night, I did something I never thought I would. I called her. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up. No greeting. Just the soft inhale of someone not sure what's coming. I listened to the audio, I said. She didn't speak. And I read the letter again. I added. Every word. Still silence. "I have questions," I said. "But not the kind you're expecting." Finally, she spoke. "Ask me." I took a breath, then let it out slowly. "Was there ever a moment," I said, "during all of it, when you looked at him and wished he was me?" There was a sound on the other end. A sharp breath. And then her voice, low, shaking. "Yes," she said. "All the time." That's when I cried. Not because it was a satisfying answer, but because it was the most honest thing we'd said to each other in months. We talked for 2 hours that night. Not as husband and wife. Not as enemies. Just two broken people trying to untangle a mess that had taken years to build. She admitted things I didn't want to hear. I confessed things I didn't realize I'd buried. We didn't fix anything, but we understood each other for the first time in a very, very long time. Before we hung up, she said something that stuck with me. I think we loved each other as best as we knew how. But neither of us knew how to say we were unhappy until it was too late. And maybe that's the tragedy. Not the cheating, not the betrayal, but the silence we both sat in for too long, hoping love would speak louder than pain. It's been 4 months since that night. The night we finally stopped hiding behind polite smiles and quiet assumptions. The night she called me broken, and I realized I'd been breaking long before she ever strayed. The night I learned you can grieve a person who's still breathing and forgive them anyway. Fallon didn't come back. Not to the house, at least. She stayed with her sister for a while. Took time to figure out who she was without the mask, without the performance. She started therapy, left her event planning job, got a part-time gig at a bookstore of all places. Said it was the first time she could breathe without pretending to be someone she wasn't. We talked, on and off. No yelling. No accusations. Just two people sifting through emotional rubble, trying to decide what deserved to be rebuilt and what was better left behind. I learned things about myself, too. That I was never weak for being soft. That I deserved someone who chose me fully, not someone who was just grateful I hadn't left yet. I started running. Got a therapist. Grew out my beard. Even joined a small local support group for men who'd been through betrayal. I expected to feel embarrassed. Instead, I felt seen. And then something strange happened. About a month ago, Fallon called and asked if we could meet for coffee. I said yes. Not because I thought it would change anything, but because I wanted to see if we could finally look each other in the eye, as equals, as honest people, maybe even as friends. She looked different. Not sad. Not shattered. Just real. And when she smiled, for the first time in a long time, I believed it. We talked for hours. We didn't rehash the affair. We didn't assign blame. We just talked about books, music, childhood memories, Rufus, who still hates car rides, by the way. And when it was time to go, she reached out and hugged me. No agenda. No hidden meaning. Just closure. And maybe peace. We're not together. We won't be. But we've both made peace with the fact that not every love story ends in marriage, and not every ending has to be bitter. Sometimes love changes shape. And sometimes, letting go is the kindest thing you can do, for both of you. Now I wake up in a house that finally feels like mine. It's quieter, yes, but it's no longer filled with the weight of everything unspoken. And for the first time in years, I feel free. Not because she left, but because I found myself in the silence she left behind. Thanks for listening to my story. If any part of this resonated with you, share something below. Maybe a moment you realized a relationship was over, or a time when closure came from the most unexpected place. You've been watching Reddit Confessions, where real stories find real voices. And sometimes, even after betrayal, we discover a future brighter than we imagined. Stay strong, stay honest, and never stop listening to your own voice.